Mortgage arrears in Australia. Let's have a look. Good morning everyone, Florian Heise here and welcome to another episode of Heise Says. I have my stein of coffee and I thought we'd look at this article from ABC News because it highlights just the growth of Australians unable to pay their mortgage, keep up with their payments, and it fits squarely in line with all of the information that's coming out of DFA and their household surveys. And I think it would also just tie in with everyone's anecdotal, experiential evidence that cost of living is getting higher. And you have to remember that when we're reading this, interest rates are at an all-time low. They're at an insanely low rate. I literally rang up my bank yesterday and said, I saw some things on Facebook offering me 3% interest rate. I want a discount. And I got a discount. And I'll do it again next month. I'm waiting for the next rate cut to come. Can't hurt. Took me 20 minutes. Worth it. I mean, okay, you have to suffer through the bank's, annoying process, but it can't hurt to ask, guys. It cannot hurt to ask. I encourage you all to do it if you've still got a mortgage. So, mortgage arrears catching a growing number of Australian borrowers despite low interest rates. It should be insanely low interest rates. And this is a pretty sad story, this one, actually. So, Les Latke thought he'd found his very own slice of paradise when he bought his house in a quiet suburb in Sydney's north in 2001, a home among the gum trees, with views of a national park and even an office space downstairs where he could build his software business. So, I mean, that looks bloody nice. I can appreciate why they'd like that. Raised house, he's got an office space there to work from home, among the trees. The only problem is cleaning the gutters, which I probably just reminded myself that I have to do. So, here are the key points. A growing number of Australians are finding themselves in mortgage arrears. Many find they are getting into trouble after illness or a relationship breakdown. Financial counsellors seeing increased demand for their services. Maybe this is also to do with the lack of just financial education in our schooling system here in Australia and the general population. I guess we all, have faith that our government and Reserve Bank know what they're doing. Well, not all of us, but most people do. So, he and his wife, Samara, bought the Forestville property for $500,000, taking out a $250,000 home loan. That's not a big home loan, $250,000. Even at the time when he bought it. We came here, only saw half the house, and we both agreed this is perfect, Mr. Latke told 730. It was love at first sight, and the couple could picture themselves growing old together in the house's sunny rooms and leafy gardens. Well, okay, but there's one problem, and I know a lot of people have, can't quite handle this. I know that by just talking to my own family members. Stairs, aging in place. A house like that's going to be harder to age in place unless you have the capacity to live downstairs. So, just something to keep in mind, people. We're living longer. But 2 decades later, the loan has ballooned to over $600,000, and the couple are struggling to pay it back, along with several other debts which total more than $1 million. So, that's just crazy. It's just insane. The Latkes are just one example of the growing number of Australians in mortgage arrears, falling months behind in repayments. Never in a million years, though, never in a million years thought we'd be in this situation. Oh, I never thought in a million years we'd be in this situation anyway. Poor guy. Some researchers believe 1 million Australians could be in some form of mortgage stress. And this affects your entire life. Just this stress. Stress will age you, it'll make you sicker, it has a physiological aspect on your entire body. If you're constantly in a state of stress, your hormones, you'll get the fight or flight reflex, your hormones will flood through your system and that affects your body. Stress ain't good, guys. Sometimes it's better to have a reduced stress life, have less money, less luxuries, but be at a reduced stress and happier and healthier. Ratings agency Moody's says the number of borrowers at least 30 days behind in their mortgage repayments has grown over the past few years to 1.58%. Typically, you find that arrears rates rise when economic conditions worsen, JP Morgan chief economist Sally Auld told 730. I'm just seeing all these people, they go to the same people again and again for these comments. I remember there was a magazine we had here called MX, one of those little train mags, you know, that they gave when you go on the train. They used to give this dodgy paper, and we managed to get onto the cover of it doing a proposal to replace all of the city cycle parking here in Brisbane with smart car parking. And I got hate mail for it, because I mean, you know, we're a hilly subtropical city. No one who actually does business can ride around on a stupid bike from one meeting to another, okay? No one who's going to be taken seriously. If you rock up to a meeting stinking like a pig, sure, if you're a hippie douche, it doesn't matter. I mean, no one's going to care if you're, you know, you go to your I don't know, poetry recital sweaty or stinky. That's probably part of the thing. But if you're going for a business meeting, you need to look presentable. So that's why my suggestion was to have the smart car parking there, because they were good fuel efficient vehicles, and I happen to have one. But I'm going off tangent on my story. I've developed a relationship there with that reporter, and they'd constantly just approach me for quotes on different things from an architect's perspective. And as you might have guessed, if you've watched this channel, I tend to like talking, and I don't mind giving people my opinion. So the fact that arrears rates are going up probably does speak to persistently low income growth. Well, I'd say, you know, hasn't it been stagnant in our country? So overall income growth in the economy is running at about half of long-run averages. And what that means is mortgage holders in general are using a greater portion of their income to pay back the mortgage. Mr. Lakita's business ran into trouble. He slowly increased his mortgage from $250,000 to $609,000. So there you go. He started using the equity in his home to make up for other shortfalls, which it's not real money, you know, unless you sell the house and cash it all out. Then the couple were hit by several major health problems at once. Mr. Lakitas was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and doctors discovered Mr. Lakita had a blockage in his heart that required surgery. I had 2 lots of stents, memory loss, arthritis, and to top it all off, I had the compromised nerve in my back, so I had to have major back surgery, he said. With neither able to work, the debt piled up, and the couple took out a second loan with a different lender of $200,000 at an interest rate of 60%. And someone shared this article on Facebook, and this is what I homed in on. That to me just reeks of desperation. 60% interest rate. So in 1 year's time, you're owing, it depends how it's calculated, but best case, you're owing $260,000. If it's calculated daily, you're going to owe more. Mr. Lakitas described that as probably the biggest mistake of my life. With the help of friends, he has since paid off the loan. But now they have 3 months to sell the family home and pay off the other debts before the bank takes possession of the property. Okay, 3 months. Just think about the length of time properties are sitting on the market at the moment, how long the clearance rates are, which is going up. 3 months is 90 days. It's not a lot of time. Not a lot of time. Particularly if he has to take a loss. Never in a million years thought we'd be in this situation, he said. If I fail to get a contract of sale within 3 months, they've asked us to voluntarily hand over the house. So the bank's going to kick him out of the house. He's seeking help from financial counsellors at Catholic Care. The head of financial counselling in the Diocese of Broken Bay, Nikki Rowe, said the Lakitas' story was all too common. We're seeing demand increase year on year significantly, she told 730. There's an Australian dream for people to own their own home, and often because of the cost of property, 2 incomes are required. Now I'd say this has got more to do with our workforce changing. Think about it, generations back, you could easily sustain a family, a mortgage, and have good quality of life on 1 income. Now, because, well, women are encouraged to go into the workforce as much as possible, which is everyone's right to do, but the problem is the market adjusts. So if you've got double, or we'll say a third increase in the workforce capacity, what's that going to do to wages? What's that going to do to wages? I mean, okay, we've got a little, let's look at our, here, we've got, you know what, no, wait, I'm going to find a proper one. Okay, so I found a little diagram that's going to help me explain this without me drawing all over it, well, without me trying to draw it. So you've got a little table here. This is a model, a representation of our labour market, let's just say. Down the bottom here, you've got a number from 0 going up to the number of workers. Okay, so that's increasing. And here you have the wage rate. Just remember, this is a simplification of model. So say this happens to be the equilibrium point of our workers, because this is the demand for workers and this is the supply of workers. So this is the equilibrium. So that's where our wage point sits, and that's the number of workers. So we say that's X, X, and Y. Now, because we've increased our supply of workers, and say the demand, well, we'll say the demand, it increases slightly too, but not as much as the number of workers. Okay, so both of those change. So now that will go YB is our wages, and that is our number of workers. So X plus N, and that is N. I need to get a Wacom tablet to draw this on. But because our supply of workers have increases, the average wage has decreased. Okay, the wage in this model has decreased, and demand has equalized. And you can put a minimum wage in there and that changes all these other things, but I just want to get this concept over. But another thing you've got to realize, now you've got, say, the household, where it used to have one income, now has two incomes. So the market purchasing power for people buying houses, which is usually in households, will adjust to reflect that. Okay, so that's another thing to think about, guys. That's another thing to think about. We're at a point now where you need two incomes to just scrape by. You need two incomes to buy a house. Okay, so it's kind of bit us in the ass too now, where you're getting two people pretty much enslaved to their mortgage, enslaved to their house to pay it off. And this will adjust by time if things change, but you gotta look at it. Rachel and I found, actually quite surprisingly, that for her stepping from working excessive hours and focusing on the family and the home and just cooking, the amount of money we saved eating better, eating healthier, homeschooling our children, compared to her working full-time as well, and the cost that incurred, it kind of evened out. But the real bonus was we're all so much healthier. I couldn't believe it. Our diets were just so terrible because we were just hammered to get back after work. So there's kind of a more essentially triple bottom line. You got to look at your health, you got to look at your stress, you got to look at everything in regard when you're doing a family budget, when you're making decisions together as a family, because it's often don't believe the BS you're told by the media or the news or anyone. They don't know your circumstances, and sometimes it's worth just looking at alternatives. Trust me. So back to this article. So you can see now why two incomes are required, but also kind of sucks for us all. And also another thing you got to remember, over time in the last 20 years, our population has increased by 25%. So that's increased our workforce, and hopefully that's also increased the demand for it. But it depends. It should. Technically it should, but I don't know if it always does. So Miss Rose said, when circumstances change, such as health, problems, a marriage breakdown, or loss of income, people often find themselves unable to meet their regular mortgage payments. And I know the banks do have hardship situations. So if you're in trouble, you can approach the bank, and they'll give you like interest-free terms for a period, or ways to deal with it. You can do that, guys. And particularly with all of this coming, and there'll be another article I'll be talking about later today about just mental health and treatment for young people. I frankly think we're pretty much in a recession, and I think we're definitely going to head to one soon. You need to be aware of, particularly those of you that are preparing for this, of the mental health risks to your friends and families who may not be, who may be copying it, whose business may be hitting it hard. Just reach out to them and ring them up and talk to them and say it'll be okay, don't worry, something. So rates bills nearly 4 years behind. 4 years behind in your rates bill. So Perth mum, Barbara Finlay, found herself in that situation after buying a property with her husband in 2011. The trouble started when the couple split up. I don't want to move out because rental prices are higher than what my mortgage was, she says. I didn't really want to upset my children, so I continued to stay on and pay all the bills on my own. With interest accumulating, Miss Finlay is now $2,000 behind on her mortgage repayments, owes almost $10,000 in bills, and is facing the very real prospect of losing her home. I've got rates that are 3, nearly 4 years behind, she said. Water bills, everything, phone bills, they're out of control. Miss Finlay is now dipping into her superannuation to cover the debt and living off food hampers from her local church to feed her family. I don't sleep a lot, she said. You're constantly worrying that you're going to be one of those families who's living in their cars. Things are not likely to get better. Sally Auld said, while arrears rates were still low by international standards, current economic conditions indicate the problem was likely to grow over the coming year. It's not our view that over the next 6 to 12 months the labour market is going to get a lot better, she said. It's not really our view that income growth is going to pick up a whole lot. I think what that tells you is this trend increase in arrears rates is probably likely to continue over the next 6 to 12 months. Well, guys, if we let's look at our consumer and business confidence, all heading down. Look at our GDP growth. It's heading down, trending down. Property price surveys, all predicted to go down. Australian, our economy, our economic spread. We'll go to my favorite website here, like I always love doing. Look at what our export market is comprising. It's comprised of. Look at where it's getting, or look at what we're importing. Let's look at all the stuff we're importing. But look at where we're exporting. Okay? Whoops. Look at where we're exporting to. China, Japan, South Korea. US is 3.5%. It's also one of the biggest investors, if not the biggest investor in Australia. So, we've got to keep all this in mind, guys, because this will affect the economy in Australia going forward. And I think a lot of people who are probably watching my channel and watching other channels that discuss these issues are preparing themselves and setting themselves for it. And I mean, does it come down to lack of understanding of how the economy works? That most people are apolitical? Let me know what you think in the comments, guys. So, yeah, I can't see income growth going up. I really can't. Miss Auld said, a weak housing market was only adding to the problem. Yes, particularly people are borrowing against it out of desperation. If you are in difficulty with your mortgage, it's very easy to exit that in a stronger housing market because prices are going up. There's demand for property, and it's easy to sell and get rid of the debt, she said. In a softer housing market, that's a lot more difficult to do because you might have to take a hit on that price you've received. And that's psychologically, that's hard to do, to take a loss, to cop a loss. So that means we're probably in a world where mortgages stay in arrears longer than would otherwise be the case. Barbara Finlay is trying to make the best of her situation and hopes that with the help of financial counsellors, she can pay back her mortgage and bills. I have to stay positive because if you don't get very far in life, she said. I need to show my children, that you've got to keep pushing. It's the only way through. Okay? Guys, what do you reckon? What do you think? I think there's a lot of people here making some big mistakes. Some really big mistakes. I think it's making out of desperation. That just reeks of desperation. That's really sad. That people are getting to that point. Can you even get a loan at that rate? Where would that be? Like a second tier lender, like Cashies or something like that? And that's insane. I remember when I first moved out of home, my parents said, never go to anything like that. If you're in trouble and you need money, don't be too desperate. Come to us. We'll help you. Don't go to stuff like that. I mean, that's like as a uni kid first going out and learning things. First moving out of home. That's different to when you're this point. And that's kind of reeks of desperation. I feel sorry for the guy. I really do. And it's good that at least he had friends to help him knock that over. but that still may not save him. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you all again later today. Take care.